stand out in that way.
Good evening, everyone. I'm calling the meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. Welcome to regular meeting number 1415 of the Wachusett Regional School Committee. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on Holden TV, channel 194, and holdentv.com. The first item on the agenda tonight is public hearing. We have 3 people, I believe, who have signed up for public hearing. The first person that I have signed up tonight is Bridget D'Amelio from Sterling.
Hello, I am joined by Nicole Daly. We are both the coaches of the Wachusett girls flag football team, and we just wanted to provide an update. We were here back in April of last year, and we wanted to provide an update of what has been happening with our season and where we are at this point. All good things. So we wanted to let you know that we had a successful season last spring. We went 8-8 for our inaugural year, and we were invited to Gillette Stadium to attend the championships. We weren't a part of it playing, but we were recognized as a team, and that happened in June. 2 of our players were named to the all-conference team and were recognized that night. And then later on in the summer, 4 of our girls were invited to participate in the We Run the World, the World Girls Flag Football Tournament, which is the largest girls flag tournament in the world. And that was in Philadelphia. Those 4 girls also were invited to a college showcase at Northeastern University, and then also a college showcase in Philadelphia that same weekend. The same 4 girls were 4 out of 9 girls in the Central Mass region that were invited to now be a part of the NFL regional team, which is hopeful to qualify for the Nationals, and which will be televised, and that will be happening in Canton, Ohio in July. Jordan D'Amelio, who was here, has soccer practice tonight, couldn't be here tonight, but she was able to meet with the administration, including the superintendent, the principal, and the athletic director in August, and was able to get official school recognition to be an official Wachusett club sport for this coming spring. So we are very excited for that. Within that recognition, we were able to get allowed field space for practice, and we will host 2 home games, which are a tournament-style game, which means that we will host 8 different teams from the region, which is like Fitchburg, Leominster, Air Shirley, and Springfield, to name a few. We will certainly get that information out as soon as we have dates on that. Our biggest announcement tonight is that we just found out this news that we were actually invited, our whole team is invited to play in the halftime show of the New England Patriots game, and that is this Sunday when they play the Aaron Rodgers and the Jets at 1 p.m. So we were allotted tickets for our players and their families to come watch, and we're going to be playing. The other teams that will be there we found out are Fitchburg, Pentucket, and Salem. So there were 2 Eastern Conference and 2 Central Conference, and we're one of the 2 and one of 4 teams that were asked. And we're the first girls flag team to be asked this year, so we are very excited about that. So please follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We try to update all of that, and also just please get everybody to our home game when we are here in the spring. So we just wanted to provide an update. So.
Thank you very much. And good luck at Gillette Stadium. All right, the next speaker tonight is Lindsay Lucasen from Holden.
Hi, so tonight I'm actually reading a letter written by somebody who wants to remain anonymous. Dear members of the school committee, I am writing anonymously to express concerns regarding the new reading program and its impact on our special education students, particularly those who are not primarily verbal. It is crucial to understand that our educational practice needs to align with all children, and I believe that the current approach may inadvertently hinder their progress. This program is a disservice to a lot of children in special education. While I understand the complexities of educational administration, it is essential to recognize that our children's IEPs are not compliant with state guidelines and federal law. I hope that we can work together to ensure that all children receive the education they deserve without misunderstanding or misinterpretation of the laws that are there to protect them. As the superintendent mentioned in the last meeting, this has just been a misinterpretation of regulations. I have observed a troubling trend where teachers and support staff are being held responsible for student performance issues, while the administration seems to be less accountable for the challenges we face. I urge the committee to encourage the administration to take ownership of the current situation and support the dedicated staff who are striving to make a difference in our children's lives. Additionally, it is imperative that we focus not just on filling vacant positions, but on creating an environment that retains our talented educators. Competitive salaries and supportive working conditions are critical for this effort. To the superintendent, I encourage you to lead by example, taking responsibility not only for our successes, but also for the challenges we face. We as parents are not simply emotional, we are deeply committed to advocating for our children's needs. Together, let us ensure that decisions are being made that prioritize the well-being of our most vulnerable students. Thank you for your attention in this important matter. Sincerely, a concerned parent.
Thank you. The third speaker tonight I have is Angela Mahar from Holden.
Hi, good evening, everybody. This is my daughter, Tori, and this is my son. My name is Angela Mahar. I have been a Holden resident for 14 years. I am here today as a tired, very concerned parent, but also as my son's hero. This is my son, Colin. He is a senior in high school at the Learning Center of the Deaf in Framingham, Massachusetts, where he has been placed since the age of 3. The district has always provided full support for his placement, which I am eternally grateful for. Colin is a deaf student who has severe diagnosed ADHD. The district and I, as a team, explored many options for him and came to an agreement that participation in extracurricular activities was a required part of Colin's education. His IEP states that, quote, Colin requires an extended day to allow for participation in extracurricular activities to support his academic and socio-emotional development, and states transportation will be provided. He took a liking to sports, specifically soccer and basketball, and the district supported and implemented his IEP as stated, so we were very happy. In 2023, everything changed. Suddenly, there were restrictions and inconsistent implementation of transportation services. Restrictions including not transporting for games, not transporting after a certain time of day. When we tried to work with the district to choose sports that aligned with time restrictions, all of a sudden it was only a certain number of days of the week. This forced me to have to take a large role in transporting Colin to ensure his participation in the extracurricular activities that are written in his IEP. Framingham, I'm sure most of you are familiar with where Framingham is, but Framingham is a 60-mile round trip ride. And doing this myself multiple times, 3 or 4 times a week, put great strain on our family. I had to miss or take off significant time from work and had to scramble to make arrangements often, which resulted in me losing my job. I filed a PRS complaint in March of 2024, and a letter of finding was issued against the district in May 2024. There were multiple findings noted, but one specifically stands out. Quote, Despite having inconsistent transportation provided by the district, the student had access to extracurricular activities due to the complainant's good faith effort to transport the student when the district did not, therefore receiving a free, appropriate public education. Take a moment to digest that briefly. I am the reason my son received a free, appropriate public education. The district was ordered also to reimburse me for the 39 trips that I made to and from Framingham from December 2023 to May 2024. That has never been received. Also, the district, there was a corrective action plan due by June 14th of 2024, and to date, I have received zero communication from the district regarding this. None, not one person has reached out to me to discuss the issues with my son. During the current 2024 to 2025 school year, things remain exactly the same. The district continues to partially deny transportation and provides no reimbursement for games or anything other than a practice. I continue to remain unemployed to make sure my son receives the free, appropriate public education he is entitled to. The district continues to be silent. Everyone in this room knows this is unacceptable and against the law. What is a parent supposed to do when every proper avenue fails and you have exhausted all options besides seeking legal counsel? I stand here before you today frustrated, exhausted, afraid for my son's very last year of high school, his senior year. I will no longer be silent, and I will stand proudly his hero. My hope is that sharing Colin's story not only helps other parents find the strength to share theirs, but helps the school committee take steps to make sure that this never happens to another family again, and that no child or family is ever left behind. Thank you.
Those were the people I had signed up tonight. Was there anybody that I missed who signed up to speak? There's one more. Come on. If you could just state your name and what town you're from so we can note it.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Letts. I live at 69 Liberty Circle in Holden. As I stand before this body, my biggest concern here is that no one is truly listening to what is being shared by parents and teachers and staff. There seems to be kind of an irritated attitude amongst the body and administration that the concerns voiced up at the podium here maybe aren't valid. Maybe the speaker is emotional, maybe they're angry, maybe they just want to cause problems. And I can assure you, everyone here in this room, attending tonight, watching at home, would much rather that they did not have to come before you and plead for meaningful programming and academic equity for their child. So we sit through these school committee meetings, and Joan DeAngelis gives a report, and the committee has glowing compliments and thank yous are extended. And this is moments after hearing many of these angry parents speak. And so it leads me to think maybe this committee is too easily impressed. We are asking you, we are begging you to please read between the lines of these reports. Isolated classrooms with a co-teacher at a middle school doesn't mean that we're doing inclusive programming. It means it's isolated to those students and those teachers in those specific classrooms. Doesn't mean that it's a wide-reaching effort that is being made and carried out with thoughtful planning. Unified sports are only unified if all students can participate and those students are set up to be successful, meaning they can engage in whatever means is appropriate for them with success and happily, hopefully. There has to be some nuance to our support for students. So what is the big disconnect here, and how can we come together and solve it? It will require the willingness of the school committee members to challenge and question the decisions that are made by Joan DeAngelis, the special education program administrators in the district, and the building administrators as well. Right now in our district, despite the IEP meeting being a team process, administrators are making the big decisions on IEPs, such as placement, access to academic services and programming, access to paraprofessionals, and even service delivery grid minutes. This is the disconnect. What you are being told is happening is not, in fact, how it looks in daily practice. We're told that the district is creating wonderful programs and we're going to be including our students with special needs. You hear the buzzword inclusion, and I hear the buzzwords DESE findings. This big push for services in the general education setting is to the detriment of the individualized needs of students with special needs. I want you to hear this one statement, if you hear nothing else that I say. Inclusion is not a placement. Inclusion is a mindset. So what does this mean? You are not placing a child in inclusion, you're placing them in the general education setting. But what does this actually look like in practice? Student A, let's call him Will. Will is currently in a district-wide program, such as the ABA or developmental program. But Will is moved to his general education homeschool because he does not exhibit any behaviors. Yay, Will. This frees up the ABA paras to help support more kids in the program. But now Will, who may be an autistic student or a student who happens to have Down syndrome, is placed in the general education setting, and we are not set up for him. Will now has a building-based paraprofessional, and the impactful training this para has received is little to absolutely none. The general education teachers are now running behavior plans, managing a para that needs constant guidance to support a student with needs far more intensive than the para is accustomed to. There's no sensory space in the building. So when Will starts to have behaviors due to the lack of support, he's got to be moved out in the hallway. Classes of students on their way to lunch walk by him as he screams, daily. This happens daily for him throughout the day. We're told to take data, we ask for an ABA para. We're told Will no longer has access to an ABA PA because he's not in the ABA program anymore. It doesn't matter that this might be what he needs. We simply don't do that. Will's had some good academic skills when he was moved mid-year to his gen ed homeschool, but now with his behaviors increasing, his access to the general education classroom is actually pretty limited. He does most of his work with his para, one-on-one in the pod. Not very inclusive. Students are being moved around this district because we have eliminated the educational options for them under the guise of inclusion. Students are not getting the services dictated by their diagnosis, their learning profile, and their social emotional needs. Students are getting a menu of what is offered, and I remind you, inclusion is not a placement, it's a mindset. We have Lily, a second grade student. She's been on the watch list since kindergarten. Lily's father and 2 older siblings are dyslexic. Lily's teachers have tried asking for testing and pushed for more para support. This was refused in kindergarten. It's too early, and she can just use the kindergarten para when she needs help. But the kindergarten para is mostly with Noah, who rolls on the floor all the time and sometimes throws all the toys so the whole class has to leave the room. Lily doesn't get much help in kindergarten, even though her teacher does her best with RTI. In first grade, she's tested, her scores are low, but the assistant principal, who's also the team chair, says they're just not low enough. She's not eligible. Doesn't matter that the team around the table recommends an IEP. It doesn't matter that her CTOP scores are all poor. The assistant principal says it's fine, she's in a classroom with support, she can get it when she needs it. She spends 90 minutes in ELA in her second grade inclusion classroom. The para in the room is really busy helping the other 7 students who are already on IEPs for reading because their scores were worse than hers. By the beginning of 3rd grade, Lily sees a therapist for low self-esteem. Now she's writing biographies and reading more complex science texts. But her reading and writing has taken a nosedive. She's tested and finally gets on that IEP in April of her 3rd grade year. She reads at a mid-2nd grade level at the beginning of her 4th grade year. These stories I've told you are a mixture of real students that I have known during my time working in special education in this district. I have dozens more of them, and so do the people around you tonight. Joan doesn't tell these stories, but these are the ones that matter. At my exit interview with Dr. Riley, I expressed concern that we are eliminating special education district-wide programs and substantially separate programming and replacing it with inclusion, which turns out to be an ineffective learning environment for many students. Our programs are overcrowded, understaffed, and the students are in inclusion because it's what we do now, not because it's what's best for them. Member Kirschenbaum asked a question of Joan at the last school committee meeting, and it was a productive question, but it was not answered. She asked, what is being done to build the capacity of the general education teachers and paraprofessionals? The answer, as I see it, is not much or nothing. Students are quite literally being dumped into placements all over the district in the name of inclusion. Inclusion should be meaningful. It is not enough to simply be in the room. The gen ed setting can be very overwhelming for students, and it may not be their least restrictive environment. Our gen ed teachers and paras do not have the building-based support or physical space in many cases to support this big push for inclusion. You cannot eliminate the support a student needs because you don't have enough staff, or they aren't having behaviors, or they don't need to have specialized reading instruction every day.
Ms. Letts, please.
Yep, I'm on my last sentence. The disconnect we have here is that we're not listening to teachers and parents. These decisions made by administration are not accompanied by a plan for meaningful inclusion through supported transitions and programming. We will not stop advocating even when we seem emotional and angry, and this body should not stop advocating either. So I will leave you with this quote: "How a society treats its most vulnerable is always the measure of its humanity."
Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda tonight is a presentation from the Special Education Parents Advisory Council.
Thank you, Barry.
I got it to work once.
There you go.
It's all better.
Thank you. Thank you. CPAC is here tonight to cover a few different areas. The first we wanted to revisit, we've touched on this before, but the purpose of what CPAC is for. The Massachusetts Special Education Law, Chapter 71B of the Mass General Laws, require that a school district establish a CPAC and assigns both an advisory and participatory function. The following is an excerpt of Section 3 of that law that pertains to CPACs. The Parent Advisory Council duties shall include, but not be limited to, advising the school committee on matters that pertain to the education and safety of students with disabilities, meeting regularly with school officials to participate in the planning, development, and evaluation of the school committee's special education programs. We've talked about this before, and we feel it's important to talk about it again. The following are highlights from DESE's guidance for CPACs, and bear with us because this is important. The district must take whatever steps are necessary to ensure there is a district-wide special education parent advisory council in operation. The CPAC is authorized to provide advice to the district regarding its special education programs and policies. The advice may include recommendations, verbally and/or in writing, to those parties in the district responsible for overseeing special education, including the special education director, the superintendent, and the school committee. The CPAC is additionally authorized to meet at regular intervals with designated school officials and to engage in other activities which enable the CPAC to participate in the planning, development, and evaluation of the district's special education programs. A school district is also required to demonstrate that it has established a CPAC, that it has a functioning CPAC, and that's part of various audits from DESE's Program Quality Assurance Review. When they come on site, which will happen later this year, DESE will ask to speak with CPAC officers. We continue to state that our CPAC is unable to serve in our advisory role. As we have expressed many times in the past few months, Wachusett Regional School District CPAC continues to be left out of discussions or decisions that directly impact students with disabilities in our district. We've shared that our goal is to foster a positive and productive relationship with the administration and school committee, rooted in collaboration rather than reaction. However, this can only be achieved if the school district, both administration and the school committee, includes us in these important discussions. We've heard lots of conversations via emails and different ways that we've tried to advocate that we're not really sure if this is CPAC's role. We've heard very clearly what the law defines, and we're asking you to please help us meet the requirements of the law and allow us to properly serve in our advisory capacity. We expect to be able to advise the school committee on policies that relate to special education. We're very appreciative of the efforts of Member Otmar as the chair of the policy subcommittee and the members of the subcommittee for allowing us the ability to speak at added public comment and listening to our advice. While this is a great step in the right direction, it still doesn't allow CPAC the ability to advise the subcommittee and serve in that participatory function, or even the full school committee on that matter, on concerns that pertain to special education. There are times that we find our only outlet is to speak at public comment, and that creates an adversarial role, and that's not one that we want. So we encourage you to consider a formal process to allow us to do so. We originally were planning to present at the last school committee meeting. Chair Runstrom had indicated that he had asked administration to provide CPAC with the presentation so we could collaborate and provide feedback. We were thrilled to have an opportunity to be proactive versus reactive. That's all we're asking for. We did not see the presentation until the school committee meeting. Current year action items and long-term goals for special education have been created. In a collaborative relationship, these goals would be created in conjunction with CPAC. We met with Dr. Riley this morning and asked if we can address our concerns directly with him and the special ed director in an upcoming meeting. It's hard to reconcile some of what we heard in that presentation to what we're hearing day to day with our district families. We are ready and able to serve in our advisory role to you, our school committee, but we ask that you help us facilitate that. So one of the areas that we were planning to discuss at the last school committee meeting related to PRS data concerns. And after reviewing the data that was publicly shared prior to the last school committee, we provided feedback to our CPAC liaisons and to administration. Whereas those concerns were not shared in the last public meeting, we'd like to share our thoughts and highlight some of our concerns. There was information from the school committee motion that was not provided. Discrepancies were also noted based on the limited number of letters of finding that CPAC has access to. We have had access to certain information that families have shared with us or through public records requests, so we don't have access to all of the information, obviously, that the district has. But based on the limited information that we have, we noted some discrepancies. So the following information was missing from the motion that all of you as the school committee voted to approve. Complaints which were referred to the Office of Civil Rights, a description of noncompliance, whether or not corrective action was required, whether that corrective action required third-party involvement, the corrective action deadline, and the date when the corrective action was completed. And this is really important. The Office of Civil Rights referrals are where complaints of retaliation are referred to. A description of noncompliance can help identify trends and areas requiring training. On the data that was listed, the description was special education, but details such as the areas of noncompliance, like transportation, independent educational evaluation, or the reasons for the noncompliance, would be incredibly helpful for a leader that's trying to determine where are the pain points. Details surrounding corrective actions. We've heard from many families that these dates are past due. We just heard that tonight. We've talked about communication and the breach of trust that this creates, not only when a complaint is filed. So imagine how that happens when a family works to get it all the way to PRS, gets a finding of noncompliance, only to have nothing happen. Imagine the frustration of that family, and we've heard the impacts of that tonight. We heard some great discussion at the last school committee meeting from all of you around how we can fix this. And that data that wasn't able to be provided would be a great tool for Dr. Riley to use to answer those questions. And we understand that the administration is very limited and pulled in a million different directions. But we really think that this would be valuable to be able to pull, whether that be at the next school committee meeting, the following school committee meeting. It would serve to figure out, why are these complaints happening at such alarming levels? Member Poole asked, how do we know where we're failing? Is it resources? Is it training? Those are such great questions. But without seeing the data that's missing, those questions really can't be answered. There was a lot of talk about staffing. And while we absolutely believe there is an issue with staffing, we hear about that every day, children being grouped, paras not being provided for one-to-ones. From the PRS findings that we've read, staffing will not solve all of the issues surrounding these PRS complaints. There were several complaints we've read that staff just provided inaccurate information to families. The more data that can be reviewed, data that we have, the more helpful that will help our leadership determine where these problems are. One of the other things we noted that the specific PRS data had some inconsistencies. And again, as a disclaimer, CPAC doesn't have access to all the PRS complaints. We are only able to validate a small sample of this information. But we found some variances based on information, and it's concerning. So the PRS complaint numbers on the left, and the reported data, what was presented to the school committee, is the second column. On the right is what we found in our review of the letters of findings. And for the first example, 8719, the district had reported 2 findings of noncompliance, but CPAC noted that there was 3 findings of noncompliance. What was missing here in the description is FAPE, meaning that the child was denied a free and appropriate public education. And this wasn't done intentionally, it was just the methodology that was used. We had conversation via email with Barry as to how this was done. And so when that was being compiled by Barry, they used the procedural example of the complaint versus the number of violations of the law that occurred. And we believe the proper number to report is the number of actual noncompliance violations. This is outlined very clearly and detailed in the letter of findings, which is higher than what's reported. This would also hold true for the areas where the district was found to be in compliance. And we certainly can understand the district reasoning in stating that one lapse in a procedural action may be found to violate multiple areas of state and federal laws, as well as find that the district didn't provide a free and public education. However, the purpose of this data is to use it to determine what are we doing wrong so we can improve. So perhaps one procedural violation, there might be 7 different steps that were missed for one individual, but for others, just 1 or 2. We're concerned that by not providing this information at all, or not just providing it to the school committee, but not reviewing it internally as an administration, we're missing a key opportunity to identify where these issues lie. And just in case you've never looked at a PRS complaint before, an example of that might be a parent states a concern that the school failed to identify dyslexia as a disability when determining eligibility. That could have several different components, and in the district's methodology, they would count that if it was noncompliance as just one. But that could be maybe they didn't follow the state-specific guidance to determine a specific learning disability. Maybe they didn't obtain consent. There's different steps. There's obtaining consent. Then there's requiring evaluation, observations, and there's other steps in the law that are impacted. And not all times is absolutely nothing done. There's different components of it. And we have the data, so we think that that would be helpful. Like I said, the same holds true for findings of noncompliance. There was one, 10119, where you can see there's a great number of differences from 2 and 2 to 5 and 18. And I believe that one there was an error where it was, there was an error in the calculation of it. Instead of 2 and 2 using the district's methodology, that should have been 6 findings of noncompliance from the district. We also wanted to highlight some of the information that might not be clear in this presentation because it's very detailed in what Barry presented as well, and Barry does an amazing job of trying to gather all of this information, so we don't want to downplay that at all. We understand that's a huge undertaking, but the data that's missing is very important. Where the noncompliance category is listed as FAPE, again, that's referring to a student's right to receive a free and appropriate public education. And why that's important to note, as opposed to not doing an observation or not doing, having an issue with transportation, is when this specific noncompliance occurs, students are typically required to receive compensatory services, or districts are required to reimburse parents for expenses incurred as a result of that noncompliance. This is at the district's expense. Additionally, persistent noncompliance with IDEA requirements can result in the loss of federal funding. There are many examples of denials of FAPE here. Withdrawals, I think Member Gustafson made a note of this, but it's important to reiterate. It's possible that a withdrawal can still indicate a compliance issue. Oftentimes, filing a PRS complaint will move the needle and convince a district to comply. And in these instances, the withdrawal letter itself will indicate that and state the reason why it will resolve the complaint. Parent is withdrawing the complaint because the district has agreed to XYZ, hire another staff member, hire a bus driver, whatever it might be. Withdrawals do not mean that it's not a compliance issue. Mediation. Mediation would also be a great resource through the state, but we have heard from a number of families that their requests have been denied or yield nothing. We requested data from administration back when we requested PRS data to track mediation requests, and we're told it wasn't available. We also believe that this would be helpful because if we're talking about the issues that bring parents to file a PRS complaint, we firmly believe that a lot of this can be solved prior to it getting to that point with improved communication. As this data is publicly available, CPAC was able to review complaint filing activity from 2018 to 2021. When we compare this to information provided in the superintendent's report and broken down from school year to school year, we see a drastic increase in complaints during this past school year, 2023-2024. In the past 5 years, there has been only 1 year that comes close to what we just experienced this past year, and that was during COVID, when schools were shut down entirely and children were not receiving any of their services. This data alone shows that this is a huge problem that is recently compounded in the past school year. And just to note, families only have within 1 year, and most families don't wait an entire year to file a complaint. Although you find some delays, it's not typical that you see somebody waits that entire time. So when it's broken down, one of the things we thought was important to highlight is looking at the number of families that file complaints and what findings are they getting, because we've heard sometimes, a few times now, misinterpretations of the law. And there has to be a better way for us to get from point A to point B. So when a family files a PRS complaint and they might get some findings of noncompliance and some findings of compliance, the family still received confirmation that the district was not doing something that they should have. And in those instances, for this past school year, 64% of complaints filed by families resulted in at least one finding of noncompliance by the district. Why are these complaints happening at such an alarming rate? It would be interesting to note when looking at the individual complaint data which of these complaints could have been triaged sooner before it rose to the level of a complaint. We continue to hear from our families through CPAC, and we continue to hear at public comment that families do not have a way to escalate their concerns. They do not receive a timely response and are therefore forced to file a complaint. Many of you recently have received emails from families, and families still don't receive a response. There must be a better, more efficient use of resources. We urge you to expedite the development of the district communication plan so that everyone's use of resources are managed in the most efficient way, our families and our administration.
Okay, so just looking at the data that Laura just presented. Sorry. Looking at the data, we need to examine the PRS data and the consistent struggles families are facing in securing appropriate educational services. we need to dig deeper into understanding the root causes of these challenges. And I think, it's been said here tonight, and I'll just reiterate, we can't just perceive parents who advocate for their children as a problem. We have to recognize what this advocacy really symbolizes. These families, including my own, are choosing to invest in the district. We are fighting to improve it because we believe that we have the potential as a group, as a community, to meet these children's needs. When parents stop advocating, that means they've given up, they've hired a lawyer, and they're going to try to go for out-of-district placement. And so that's why when parents come here, it's really important. If the energy, if the emotion is too much, try to read through the message. What is that family lacking? So when we look at the non-compliance issues in the PRS complaint, we have transportation issues. What does that look like? That we heard about that tonight. That means students not receiving FAPE. That means parents losing their jobs. It's a huge detriment to the community. We have independent education evaluations being denied, not being followed through with the procedure that's written out with the law, and that just delays services for children who desperately need it. We have children entering middle school this year, reading at a kindergarten level, and they're receiving IEPs that are based off of building resources and not student needs. We've got to fix this. We have denials of FAPE, free and appropriate public education. We heard tonight from one of our speakers that when that happens, that just bleeds into the mental health of these children. We have IEPs that are not being implemented, meaning students have resources that they're supposed to be getting, but they're not getting them because we don't have the people or the training or the materials to really teach these children. Then there's child fine. We're not meeting our child fine requirements when we put all of these roadblocks in front of parents to get services. There are children on 504 plans that probably should be on IEPs, but they're not. There are children in our schools that should be on 504s, but they're not. We have prior written notices. For those of you who don't know what that is, anytime you have a meeting with your IEP team or your 504 team, you get a document that recaps what was discussed in that meeting. I can't tell you how many families I've talked to where they're getting these prior written notices that do not accurately capture the meeting that they had. It's becoming a tagline in our community called bait and switch. You leave the meeting thinking your child is going to get one thing, and then you get a prior written notice that says something else. That is not how we fix the issues with trust. That is not how we get children the services they need so they can learn to read and do math and live a life that is as independent as it can be. Then you look at the corrective action plans. When we see that data and all these corrective action plans that have gone past due, there is an element of manpower. Do we have the resources to meet these corrective action plans? But to leave the communication at zero, with no communication to try to get these corrective action plans done, leaving parents hanging, that means children are still suffering. And when we look at that from a data perspective, let's look at our 2024 MCAS scores. 84% of students with disabilities between grades 3 and 8 are partially meeting or not meeting ELA expectations. If they can't read, how are they advancing to every next step in their educational journey? It's just constant deficit, deficit, deficit. Students with disabilities, 72% in 10th grade, partially meeting, not meeting ELA expectations. So what does this impact have on our children? Access. impedes their access. We have students that are being denied their right to a free and appropriate public education, and students are lacking the supports needed to benefit from Tier 1 instruction. This results in accumulating learning loss. So we've put all this focus on Tier 1 instruction, but that only hits Tier 1 students. We have Tier 3 students, where if we put a large emphasis on our Tier 3 students, that would travel up the trail all the way to your Tier 1 students. Anything you do for Tier 3 definitely impacts Tier 1, but what you do for Tier 1 impacts Tier 1. There's isolation, the absence of district-wide effort in understanding and accepting children with disabilities. Our children are being left out of the many aspects of their school day. And it's not to discredit anybody. It's impossible to understand every disability and its nuances with learning, but that's why CPAC's here. That's why parent voices are important, because we are living that life. And because our schools and our administration and our district doesn't truly understand how disabilities affect learning, we're creating this new system for people that we don't understand. We've also undercut student potential. While we make moves to improve the entire district, we are leaving out a small but impactful work towards improving educational outcomes for students with disabilities. Sorry, I can't read from that far away. Where is it? You didn't put it, okay. So what I mean by that, I can tell you from, go back. Uh-oh.
Oh, boy. Sorry, Barry, I think we need you. Oh, no, I got it.
Yeah, I think the same thing happened to me.
Is that the one you?
No, you can go forward, I'm sorry. So I'll just, the impact on families, we've heard it today, the eroded trust. IEPs are not being followed, we're having bad faith negotiations in IEP meetings, special education laws are not being adhered to, and there's really no real means to conflict resolution. There's also the financial hardship. The cost in engaging a neuropsych for a private eval starts at $5,000. The cost to engage an advocate starts at around $1,500. The cost to engage a lawyer starts at $5,500. And you have to do those three things first before you can really start to get movement on your child's needs. That is inequitable. There's also filling in where the district isn't providing services. I know families that are spending thousands of dollars a month paying for tutoring because their children can't read. There's the isolation for families. Families are forced to replace, not just supplement their students' education, and that often comes at the cost of recreational activities. Because when you're doing tutoring after school, there is no time for soccer. There is no time for dance. That time is being eaten up by services that should be provided during the school day. So, how can we change this? And I think I strongly believe that we have some simple changes that could really lead to powerful outcomes. We have to think about how the district can collaborate with stakeholders to create a needs-based special education budget. Right now, we have students on IEPs that aren't based on their needs. So to charge the administration to create a budget based on needs, how are we getting there? One way to get there is to really collaborate with stakeholders. We have a unified recreation that's developing, and that is important, but let's also invest in established recreation programs within our towns, which may have a greater reach. We all got the email last week about the young girl who wanted to participate in a theater program at her elementary school, and was unable to because the district could not provide paraprofessional support. And this asks a question of, well, whose responsibility is it anyway? I say, who cares? Let's find out how we make this happen and not just look at conflict. Let's figure out as a town, as a community, to make things like this accessible to our students. The district has the professional workforce that can actually make these recreational activities accessible. The town doesn't. So how do we marry those two resources? We need to work on a district-driven initiative to understand and accept students with disabilities. We've heard about Paxton and that remarkable activity where students participated in the creation of the brochure for the AIM program, and how that participation sparked a school-wide effort to learn more about students with dyslexia, to celebrate students with dyslexia. We've got NAQUAG, whose team worked really hard to talk about students with autism and how that might look different for all types of students. There's students who are speaking, there's students who are non-speaking, to really understand those nuances. And it opened up a level of connection with their non-disabled peers that I have never experienced before. So we have these pockets where it's working. Why are we not tapping into those resources to expand it across the district? And when we're considering district program evaluations, we'd really encourage you to seek out professionals that can provide feedback on strength-based neurodiversity affirming approaches for our complex learners, because that is the community we are failing the most. Is our children, our students whose brains literally just work a little differently. Our workforce, our administration, and our school committee. It just doesn't seem like we truly understand how neurodiversity affects students and their ability to learn and what needs to be put in place so they can learn. So we really need support from third-party professionals to start bringing that in. And I just want to, tap into a couple of things Laura said. How can we work together? Obviously, we've said it over and over again. We want meaningful collaboration. I found this quote, I just thought it was really poignant to what is happening in the district, and that is, the greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members. And I just think that that really rings true to Wachusett, because what I know about Wachusett and where I live is that this community rallies around their neighbors. We are really here to support our community, and we need to see that in our schools. Small steps have been made to improve how CPAC can act in its advisory role with the school committee, but how do we push this further? And I just have to end this to request that when the school committee receives emails from parents, I know it's hard to respond all the time, but it really goes a long way. Just an acknowledgement, a note of concern really goes away to those families. So, thank you.
Thank you. You can stay up for a second because we can discuss. Does anyone have any questions about the presentation? This isn't public comment. This is a presentation from CPAC, so we can discuss. Malia.
I have many, but I'm going to just narrow it down to one general one. I'm curious, with all of this information you've given us, I know you have meetings with administration. Did you bring some of these slides and this information to them before bringing it to us, and tried to have a productive conversation? Because I know you have standard meetings with them, and I know that's traditionally where a lot of this collaboration has happened, or at least the beginnings of it. They're different at different times, more than others. So I guess I was just curious about that, or is this the first time they're hearing this explicit list of things with the data and other issues?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I'm glad you asked that. We didn't really want to get into the detail. We were trying to keep it very global. But
Absolutely. I'm
we've
just
learned
curious in
about the
general.
PRS data. We didn't learn about it before through an admin meeting. We saw it Saturday morning, just like everybody else. We got our leadership team together to review the data and go through, compare it to the information that we had. I think it was over the weekend on Sunday morning. We emailed Dr. Riley and I think it was Dr. Riley and Director DeAngelis the concerns that we had and included our liaisons as well.
Can I just offer too, Malia, the district responded on Monday. They relooked at all that data and provided a response. And so we actually talked about this today in our meeting. I think a lot of times there is a time crunch around reports and other information. And so, you know, I certainly would want to acknowledge that, you know, CPAC didn't see the PRS information. Honestly, it wasn't ready until right before we shared it with the entire committee. It was a lot of work to bring together. But I would want to share that we responded, and we do have a different viewpoint in terms of how the information was tabulated. You know, I think it was shared in this presentation that Mr. Sklar looked at it in a different lens. He looked at the bold letter actual findings and incorporated that. And we used a similar filter on the findings of compliance for the district. And a lot of that had to do with, honestly, our capacity to provide that level of analysis for this information. I just also want to share that the things that weren't included, that were part of the motion, I actually did share during my presentation and notice to the committee. One I shared to you is referrals to the Office of Civil Rights. A referral to the Office of Civil Rights, I think how it's being defined here is them saying that you could pursue this with the Office of Civil Rights. That doesn't mean there's a violation. It's saying, here are your rights. This is where you can go for an answer. I'm not aware of any findings that we had where somebody said this is a violation of your civil rights. We'll be contacting the Office of Civil Rights or anything to that level. And so I just want to make sure that's clear. And I also would say, I would hope people know, both people who are here supporting special education students or also the general committee, I don't think the PRS findings are acceptable. I don't think I made any statement during our meeting when we were presenting that information that I found it acceptable. I think it's extremely concerning. And so I just want to make note of that because I don't want that to be lost. I don't think, and I don't think this is what's being said tonight, that there was an effort to minimize what the findings say, because there is concern, you know, when you look at the data. And I think we fully acknowledge that.
Other questions from the committee? Member Lavoie.
It's more of a comment on an observation, and I appreciate CPAC for speaking up, and I think I heard your concern over a correlation between the number of complaints and perhaps communication. And as I think about what it takes for somebody to go to a point of filing a complaint, it's typically a feeling that they're at a roadblock, and that would be one thing if communication were happening. But as a school committee member, in the last month, I've been made aware of at least 5, 6, 7 instances. One email tonight, 10 minutes before the meeting started, about somebody who's not received any communication. And that's something that we can control. That is something that administration has the opportunity to control, which is communication. And I ask myself, how does something jump from 4 to 6 to 47? How is 47 greater than any other? Take out the COVID year, you combine all of the other data points, 47 dwarfs it. Add them up. How did that happen? These are the same concerns that I wrote on an evaluation that this committee does annually. And if you look at my personal evaluation, I expressed these concerns 6 months ago, 5 months ago. So it's more of a question and it's rhetorical, but how are we addressing communication?
Member Haber.
Good evening. I can't speak for everybody in the room, but I can say that I recognize that the district is very much missing the mark for many families. But I also recognize that administration is working hard to make changes. And I hope that we can agree that these two things are not mutually exclusive. CPAC parents, like all parents, are experts on their kids. Administration has experts in special education. Again, this is not mutually exclusive. Both need to be heard, and they won't always agree. Moving forward, I would like to hear a solution-based, collaborative presentation from administration and CPAC. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a couple things. I was going to wait to the end, but I took a lot of notes, but I won't go through all of them because we can talk later. We have a regular meeting. As I said at the last meeting, I totally agree with, we can head off a lot of the PRS complaints with better communication, and I think Member Lavoie just said this, and I agree. I said it last week. I think it's something we need to strive for. I do think that there's a resource question in the office and something I want to look at in the budgeting process to see if we need more resources to improve communication in central office. I thought it was great. I liked the slide where you had some suggested changes, the things we could work on over the next year. I actually agree that those are great goals to work on over the next year, so thanks for sharing those. A question that I have that I don't need an answer to now, but I'd like to hear from you going forward, is you talked about the non-compliance categories and they weren't matching your expectations. I don't know enough to know if there's like a standard set of categories that would be helpful. So if there are, you don't have to share them now, but I'd like to hear that. And my last thing was, I've heard from you a few times tonight. You were talking about considering a formal process for allowing more participation. I've heard from you a few times that you don't feel like you're not able to advise the school committee in your role as CPAC. So I know you do have some opportunities. You're clearly presenting tonight. That's an opportunity. You speak at public session. You have a meeting with the administration monthly. Member Lavoie and I have been meeting with you periodically as liaisons. What else can you picture happening to improve that advisory role?
That's a great question, Scott, and I'm glad that you asked that. I think it's a relationship. We've gotten up here a number of times now, and no one's really listening. And we've strategized, we've tried to come up with different ways that we can deliver the message so it will be heard. So we're asking you, how can we present the message so that you will hear us? Because there are going to be times that we're going to have uncomfortable conversations. And believe us, like it was said earlier tonight, this is probably the last thing any of us want to do every school committee meeting. But we feel strongly, given the families that confide in us, of the challenges that they are experiencing. So I've talked to you about it, I've talked to Dr. Riley about it, and kind of equate it to, as I'd say, a condo association meeting. When you have a great collaborative relationship between a super and the condo owners, things are great, and nobody really shows up to the annual meeting because all the tough work is done behind the scenes. You have the people that are presenting the information, the owners know what's going on, they feel valued, they feel like they have a stake in the organization, and everything's fine. And so then maybe just an annual report or something like that is warranted. But we're so far from that vision, and that's why we continue to try to present and continue to try to share information. We've sent emails that go unanswered. So we're trying all different avenues to try to get the message across. And so that's why we're asking you, how should we be delivering this message? Because the law says that we're supposed to be participating in and advising on matters pertaining to special education. That's very different from, here's this decision that we made, here you go. If we offer feedback, it's not taken. That's a very different relationship. And that's what we're striving to get towards. So I'm excited to hear Member Haber's comment about how she would love to see an administration and CPAC presentation moving forward. We cannot wait until we get to that point.
Okay. I appreciate what you said. I just want to clarify one thing, because you said, I don't think you meant it, but you said you don't think anyone's listening. I personally don't think that's true, because people have reached out to me after meetings, other members. I don't think it's true that school committee members are not listening. That's probably not what you meant, but I just wanted to, I didn't want everyone else to react.
Taken. You know what I think, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because you know what I think it is? It's tough for us because we're speaking in public comment. And this is, I think, the first time that we've really been allowed to provide additional feedback after our presentations. So sometimes it feels like nobody's listening because we don't get a response, whether that's through, the nature of public comment or through nature of different email channels that are being sent out or from families. That's how it feels. And so I'm sorry, I didn't mean to imply that nobody's listening, so I'm glad that you brought that up.
Totally fair, and if that's the way it feels, that's your perception.
Through the chair, can I
Yep,
just share
sure,
too?
and then Sherry.
I just want to make sure too, and I agree, and I appreciate with what Member Haber said, and it's one of the things we actually spoke about this morning, is trying to identify some agenda topics on things that we could work together and maybe establish this year as moving forward. But I also want to be clear. I mean, I've personally met with the CPAC leadership team, I'm going to estimate 6 times since you've come into office, whether part of the larger administrative teams or on my own. And so, again, I just want to be clear that I think people are making an effort to try to bridge and understand this relationship and better define what it should look like and find opportunities. I think it's messy right now, and I wish it wasn't. I really wish it wasn't. But I also just want to make sure, I think it's important for the record that we recognize, I do feel like there are efforts being made in in-person meetings to try to better understand and try to find some pathway to move forward. Because I think it is important things, and I think we all have to remember, and I think I wouldn't doubt for a second why anybody's here. I think they're here about kids. And I think ideally we're all here for kids, whether it be the administration or the school committee members. And so that's why I'm hopeful that we can try to find some way that we can, get some good foundational relationship going where, because I'll acknowledge a couple things. One thing I'll say, and I agree with what Member Lavoie said earlier, and I said it about trust when we looked at this information, I think 2 weeks ago. And the bottom line is whether or not a PRS complaint was found in compliance or non-compliance, they both suggest a lack of trust. Right? People not feeling like they're being dealt with fairly. So I think it's important to acknowledge that, and we've got to find some way to start to bridge that so people feel heard, part of the process, and they start getting what they feel like their child deserves. So I just wanted to make sure I said that.
All right, I have a member.
I just wanted to add, I'm glad you brought up our conversation this morning, because I do feel like the conversation that we had with Dr. Riley today really did open up that opportunity. I mean, we discussed tangible opportunities of how CPAC can be involved with the planning and programming for special education students. And I think that the important part from that conversation that we got is how do we ensure that that trickles down, right? We can see your commitment to supporting CPAC and helping bridge the connection, but how do we get that message to trickle down to the decision makers?
Mm-hmm. I have Member Haber and then Member Lorway, and then we're going to, I see a Member Gustafson, but we'll move on after you. So Member Haber next.
I know that.
Just briefly, I was disheartened to hear your comment about not being heard as well. I think that well, again, I can't speak for the committee. I know that I've personally made an effort to learn more about CPAC since this year started. And if I truly believe that if we didn't have the best interest of all the kids in the district at heart, we wouldn't be sitting in these chairs. I've been on the committee for 5.5 years and taken my time to very carefully read the hundreds of pages that we get every month to participate in CPAC meetings, to be involved as possible. And I don't know that everyone sees that. I try my best to respond to every email I get. Can I do that? No. Is it always appropriate? No. So I just think that, again, if I can do my best to listen to you, I hope that you guys can give us the benefit of the doubt that when you're speaking, we're listening.
Okay, Dana.
Thank you. I want to reiterate what a couple of my colleagues have said, that it's tough to build trust when we hear you say you're not listening. That's a tough one to respond to as well, because what do we say to that? We say, yes, we are, and maybe you say, no, you're not. One thing I want to mention is that we have to be very careful to be appropriate in our responses to parents in written communication, because it's easy to misinterpret something that someone has written. Every email that I send as a school committee member is public record. It's very, very important that I opt for discretion and appropriateness in my responses, and that's what I do. I hear you when you say that parents would like just an acknowledgement, thank you, I've read your email, and I am very happy to do that if that's a step in the right direction.
All right, I had Malia, then Matt, then we're going to try and move on.
Thank you. I just had one quick comment, just listening to, some of this discussion. And having been involved with special education for 17 years now, actually, personally, these are not, I'm happy to hear some beginnings of collaboration, but these are not easy things to solve, not just for our district. I think in any district you go to, there is some give and take. I know the data is specific to us, but these are not easy relationships or even easy solutions. Oftentimes, even experts in special education disagree on, they may have the same outcome and the same goals in mind, but they disagree about the best way to get there, which anyone who's ever had any interaction with special education or neurodiversity knows there's different paths to the same goal sometimes. And I think that makes this work a little more challenging for everyone who's in it, whether it's a parent and a child or the district and CPAC trying to find a path forward. So I hope that as we work jointly, we work to find more opportunities for collaboration, that it may be helpful just to keep that in mind as well, because we might be saying the same thing in different ways, or we might, not we, but individuals may have similar goals and different pathways of getting there, and just because someone says, has a different path in their mind, does not mean that they're not listening or not hearing. Just they may have a different path, and so it may take longer to get to that collaborative answer where everyone feels like they've been really invested in that solution. So I'm happy to hear the discussion, and I hope that it will lead to more collaboration in the future.
Matt.
Just wanted to offer a suggestion or an opportunity. It sounds like CPAC is asking how that advisory role can be strengthened. And there's an acknowledgement of trust, and it's even evident in this conversation here at the table. I do appreciate CPAC advocating for the people that you serve. And I heard an individual speak before CPAC's presentation, and they used the word silence, and they quote unquote said no one is listening from their experience. So I appreciate the fact that you're advocating for that concern. But what I would ask of administration and really the school committee chair would be thinking of the business that's conducted at school committee meetings. Policy, budget, subcommittee meetings discuss that. Is it a lot to ask for some sort of communication to involve CPAC with providing information and asking for an opinion, an advisory opportunity to come to a meeting and present their concerns on that? I know our agenda has a spot for CPAC in it within the bylaws, and I don't believe those are specifically designed for any specific purpose per se that falls under that, but I would encourage perhaps that's an opportunity for CPAC to discuss whatever is on that agenda and what's been provided in advance. And I think if we all made that effort to communicate things out in advance, it would prevent conversations such as this, which are a tipping point of failing to act on that communication opportunity.
Thank you. All right, so I think we spent double the time we usually spend on subjects, but I think it was important. But thank you very much. We're going to move on now.
Thank you.
All right, believe it or not, we're just up to Chair's opening remarks on the agenda, an hour and 15 minutes in. I was going to promise to keep these meetings shorter than the last one, but for now, I'm just going to say welcome, everyone. Thanks for attending. The two other big things we have on the agenda tonight are the superintendent's goals for the year and a report from the facilities subcommittee on building inspections. But before that, I think Dr. Riley just had a couple quick announcements for the committee.
Just very briefly, wanted to thank our families and teachers for participating in so many family conferences, family teacher conferences. We'll be sharing that data at our next meeting. We had a nice survey response. 711 families responded to our survey and 221 educators. So we'll be sharing both that raw data and then also the takeaway from that process, but wanted to acknowledge the effort of teachers and families to make that a successful first venture. Definitely ways we can improve it, but a great first step. But perhaps most importantly, I just wanted to make everybody aware that it's going to be a special evening on Wednesday at 5 o'clock on Channel 5, one of Wachusett's own. Remy St. Germain is being recognized as the High Five recipient at the high school. He was nominated by Principal Pratt, and I have reported about Remy before, numerous acts of compassion, just a really good guy who's done a lot of super things. So just putting in a plug, if your TV set is on, please turn it to Channel 5 this Wednesday, 5 p.m. He's going to be recognized, and a very fitting tribute to a pretty special young man. So.
That's awesome. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to student representatives report.
So we do have a report, but I also want to emphasize that I hope this doesn't distract from the discussion on special education that we just had. But over the past 2 weeks, the past 2 weeks at the high school have been relatively smooth, with 2 half-days and a day off for Indigenous Peoples Day. And some may even say, myself included, that these are the highlight of the past 2 weeks. As the fall athletic season wraps up, teams are gearing up for playoffs. This means some irregular schedules as games depend on not only our teams, but also the teams in district, state, and local competitions. Last week, we held our first unified basketball game where Principal Pratt had the honor of refereeing, and the next game is set for November 5th. On the academic side, we are preparing for the upcoming NIASC visit, which will take place on Wednesday. Both students and parents have been surveyed, and the feedback will continue to guide the process. The upcoming visit will be with staff. Quarter 1 ends on October 25th, which also marks the closing of the grades. Report cards will be available on November 6th. Family teacher conferences went well overall. The new online sign-up was a change, but received positive feedback from both teachers and families. Some of my own teachers found it easier to prepare for conferences as they knew who would be attending and could tailor their meetings accordingly. On a different note, about which I know little, construction continues to progress. The new sound system in the auditorium has been worked on for the past 2 weeks, and it is almost complete. This is exciting not only for the music and theater departments, but also for assemblies and other large gatherings. Additionally, solid progress has been made on the new building behind the athletic fields. The foundation has been poured, and the building has been ordered. Like Superintendent Riley said, for something inspiring, Channel 5 recently featured Remy St. Germain, and the segment will be aired on Wednesday. Lastly, next week marks the return of the 2nd annual job fair, which was a hit last year. We are excited to host it again. Additionally, the 15th annual Mountaineers Booster Club Fair, craft fair, is less than a month away. With over 100 crafters, the event will need plenty of help to run smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on, unfinished business. We don't have any unfinished business beside what's on the rest of the agenda. So moving on to Secretary's report. So we have a consent agenda tonight consisting of the following items: approval of the executive session minutes of September 23rd, 2024, approval of the regular session minutes of September 23rd, 2024, and approval of the regular session minutes of October 7th, 2024. The executive session minutes are in your red folders. Would anyone like to have any items removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as written?
So moved?
Second.
Linda and Brett? There's no discussion, so we'll move directly to a roll call vote.
Member Beardmore?
Beardmore, yes.
Member Poole?
Poole, yes.
Member Gustafson?
Gustafson, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
Member Lorway?
Lorway, yes.
Member Haber?
Haber, yes.
Member Brennan?
Brennan, yes.
Member Lavoy?
Lavoy, yes.
Chair Renstrom?
Chair abstains and the motion passes. Moving on to committee business. I would accept a motion to amend the 2024-2025 school committee calendar as follows: to move the meeting scheduled from Monday, November 18th to Wednesday, November 20th.
So moved.
Second.
Jana and Brett. So the reason for this is that Paxton scheduled a town meeting for the evening of Monday, November 18th. By our bylaws, we can't have a school committee meeting at the same night as a town meeting. So we're suggesting that Wednesday, but it's up to the committee. Member Lavoy.
I know there's a conflict with another date in November, I believe the following date with National Honor Society induction. I believe we were all invited on that, and Dr. Riley could not attend due to school committee meeting. Is it worth looking at adjusting that date as well?
It's not a school committee.
It's a facility subcommittee meeting that we had arranged, and we were actually going to tour a building on that
Oh.
day. And so that's the conflict. And I said school committee meeting. I should have said school committee subcommittee meeting and building tour.
Okay.
Yeah, the school committee meeting is the week.
Okay, so we don't have to amend the school committee calendar. It's up to facilities what they do. But that's not for us tonight.
Well, I would ask facilities as part of this discussion to look at amending their calendar.
Okay.
Sure.
Any further discussion? So we can move to a roll call vote.
Member Lorway?
Lorway, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
Member Lavoy?
Lavoy, yes.
Member Brennan?
Brennan, yes.
Member Poole?
Poole, yes.
Member Gustafson?
Gustafson, yes.
Member Beardmore?
Beardmore, yes.
Member Haber?
Haber, yes.
Chair Renstrom?
The chair abstains and the motion passes. Moving on to Treasurer's Report and Financial Statement. The Treasurer's Report is in your packets. Questions about the Treasurer's Report should be directed to the Business and Finance Subcommittee. Questions about the financial statements should be directed to the Director of Business. All right, Subcommittee reports. The first is a report from the Policy Subcommittee. Member Otmar is not in attendance. Does anyone else from the Policy Subcommittee have anything to update the committee? I don't believe they've met since our last school committee meeting. Okay. There is, however, a motion, so as Member Otmar is not here, I would accept a motion to delete Policy 7211, policy related to support operations ridership, second reading, waiving the reading.
So moved.
Second?
By Jana and Linda. Any discussion? Seeing none, we can move to a roll call vote.
Member Beardmore?
Beardmore, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
Member Lavoy?
Lavoy, yes.
Member Haber?
Haber, yes.
Member Poole?
Poole, yes.
Member Gustafson?
Gustafson, yes.
Member Brennan?
Yes.
Member Lorway?
Lorway, yes.
Chair Renstrom?
Chair abstains and the motion passes. Moving on to the Business and Finance Subcommittee, Member Brennan.
Hi. So Business and Finance just met recently, but I was not in attendance, although I have read the minutes. I don't know if, Leah,
Yeah.
did you want to give an update, or are you not prepared? That's fine if you're.
I have not seen the minutes.
Okay.
So, I mean, I can certainly talk in general if you'd like, or I can defer to the next meeting, because I haven't read the minutes.
Okay.
Maybe we should defer to the next.
We can
meeting,
defer
unless
to the
there's
next
anything-
meeting if you want.
Unless there's anything pressing for the committee to hear.
It's the main thing that I recall, we talked about a lot of things, but the main thing relevant to the rest of the committee is we did talk about the budget process for next year.
Yep.
And the roundtable being
Yep.
in possibly December instead of November. So that was, I guess, an outstanding question. And just that process, and that we spent a lot of time on that part of the discussion. So, we're awaiting further updates on that exact process. I know there are some meetings to be held, but that was one of the big things we spent a
So
lot
we're
of time.
planning.
Yeah, I
we are
would say
planning
other stuff is, some of it's in the superintendent report, sorry. So there was the update on the end-of-year report being filed, the end-of-year report's attached in the superintendent's report. There was an update that E&D should be filed on time at the end of this month. And then we did the monthly general report, which is also in the superintendent's report, and the treasurer's report, which is also in the superintendent's report. And then I believe there was some discussion about having a townwide roundtable in December, which is also in the superintendent's report. So I feel like the superintendent's report seemed to cover a lot of what I saw in the minutes.
So we will be having a roundtable with all of the towns early in the budget cycle in December. I think you mentioned it to
Yeah.
me too. So
Right now, the two dates we were looking at, thank you to Randy for reaching out to people in availability. It was going to be held, we were looking to hold it in December at the recommendation of town managers. Right now, we've identified two dates, the 11th and 12th. We're going to try to move forward with the 12th and put that out to select boards, FinComs, and other entities in the towns. But we're waiting for one town manager to come back and got back to us, and they got back to us today.
sounds good. So traditionally, correct me if I'm wrong here, but that's not a school committee meeting, but school committee members are welcome to attend to listen to the discussion.
Usually that's how it's
Yeah,
going.
we're going to almost have an agenda setting at the next town manager meeting, I believe on the 29th next week. And I was going to defer to them if they wanted to identify a location in one of our towns.
Sounds good. All right. Jana, I think you have a motion for business and finance?
Yes, I do. So I would like to make a motion for the school committee to approve the creation of a capital stabilization fund.
Second.
Moved by Jana, seconded by Linda. Do you want to speak to the motion?
Sure. Again, this was something that Dr. Riley did write about in the superintendent's report. But basically, the idea of creating the stabilization fund is a way for the school committee to set aside money for capital projects or emergency repairs or things that are needed with other areas of the building or capital projects along the way, so that we have that money when we need it. The school committee needs to approve in order for us to set up that stabilization account. But then the reason that we are bringing it up now for the timing is that it also has to be passed at town meetings. So we wanted to make sure that we had that done well in advance so that the towns were aware for them to put on their town meeting agendas.
Any questions or discussion? So just to be clear, this vote is just the first step in the process, and the
Yes.
fund doesn't actually get created until the town meetings.
Right, and then once the fund is created, then we could go about the discussion during budget time if we want to put money into that fund. But first, the fund needs to be created. So step one is school committee needs to approve it, and then the towns need to approve it.
Okay, so the school committee approves it, towns approve creating the fund, and then it's a separate process to actually put money into the fund
Right.
later.
Yeah.
So this is just the first step in a
Yep.
longer process. Okay, got it. Are we ready to vote? Let's go to a roll call vote.
Member LaVoy?
Lavoy, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
Member Norway?
Norway, yes.
Member Gustafson?
Gustafson, yes.
Member Poole?
Pool, yes.
Member Beardmore?
Beardmore, yes.
Member Brennan?
Brennan, yes.
Member Haber?
Haber, yes.
Chair Lindstrom?
The chair votes yes, it passes unanimously. Moving on to Legal Affairs Subcommittee, Member Salmon Garrett isn't here this evening. Member Haber, do you have any updates from the Legal Affairs Subcommittee?
Negotiations are continuing with paras, and I don't think that there's any other updates since our last meeting.
No, there's not.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the Superintendent Goals and Evaluation Subcommittee, Member Poole.
Yep, so today we have a presentation from Superintendent on his proposed goals, and then there'll be a motion when he's done with that, so I'll let him.
Okay, so
Thank you.
Dr. Riley?
So, that's great, Barry. So I wanted to provide a brief overview of the goal-setting process and where we landed with goals, talk briefly about the goal format, how we landed on goal identification, the development process, and then the actual proposed goals for the 2024-26 cycle. The first piece I'd want to share is these goals are based on a 2-year cycle. And so last year, the school committee passed a policy that it would be appropriate if a superintendent received a rating of proficient overall, that they could potentially offer 2-year goals. And I think that was the recommendation of the evaluation subcommittee. It's something I would share that I'm also in favor of, because I think it allows us to create more kind of robust goals that don't end fairly prematurely. When you have a 1-year timetable, they seem to be over at a time where you're still in the midst of much of the work. And so the idea would be there'd be a formative review at the end of this year, and so an update on where the goals stand in terms of progress, and then a summative review or a final review in the following year in 2026. I think it's important to note, and I would want to share, that each of the goals include outcomes. So this is something that's new, a desire of the subcommittee, and I think appropriately so, is to make the goals meaningful but also measurable. And so if you look at the goal document that we shared in the superintendent's report, you can see, at times in education, I think you look at goals and they seem like obtuse, like in theory almost, and so it's an attempt to say, what does this really mean? And it identifies some of the things that we're hoping are going to be outcomes from this process, and will make the goals actually meaningful but also measurable. The other thing I wanted to share about it is that we would anticipate revising the goals, or at least the outcomes and the action steps, in 2025. And so some of the outcomes that you see this year on goals, some of them might be achieved this year. An example might be we're working on implementing high-quality instructional materials at the K-5 level in English language arts. Next year, depending on our textbook adoption plan, we may have a different level or curriculum that we're adding towards. And so you would have another outcome for next year. And so I would want people to understand the outcomes that you see aren't the final outcomes. There'll probably be additional outcomes, although some of the outcomes are going to take 2 years to achieve. The last thing I wanted to share is that each goal includes action steps, so there's a timeline associated with it. We include the action steps just to give a sense of scope to the goals. I think a lot of times you look at goals and think like, well, that should be pretty easy, but nothing's easy, especially in a pretty complex system with 6,500 students and 1,000 staff. So it talks about the process we're trying to go over to make sure that this work gets done, and it also allows us to have markers along the way, and so we can share with school committee, we've done this, and hopefully we're on our way to achieving some of the outcomes. So you see incremental progress, and then it'll also allow us some course correction, because sometimes things that seem like great ideas, when you start to get into it, you realize that maybe there's something different that needs to happen, and it will allow us to say, we did do this, we looked at the data, and we're going to try to go in a little separate direction and maybe change some of our action steps, or potentially even change our outcomes. So one of the things I would want to share is, while I don't foresee the goals changing, I do see additional outcomes and then updated action steps in the next year that we could present perhaps in the fall. In terms of goal identification and development, I think it's important to note that my goals are based on district improvement work. So things you've seen in both the district improvement plan and then also the strategic plan. My goal is to look at the goals or the action items that were in particular I think I was part of, and so I committed to those things being done, because as a community, as a school district, both the strategic plan especially was developed with multiple stakeholders, and so it's really putting an emphasis on why this work is important, that we get it accomplished. I also included a goal, the third goal is on communication, which is also in the district improvement plan, strategic plan, but it was also an area that the committee rated me as needing improvement, and so I think it's important to acknowledge when you get a particular rating and the committee is saying this is something that needs to improve, that we put it in a plan and we try to take steps to make it better. Lastly, I just want to thank the Goal and Evaluation Subcommittee. I've probably been a nightmare to work with a little bit, so I apologize to them. But they had some really good feedback, which I appreciated, and so if you look at our goals document, they had recommended that perhaps I offer a narrative a little bit of a description that it is 2 years and how we're approaching it. They had recommended that we have outcomes and we make, as smart goals as we could on the things that we're working on and show that it can actually be measurable so people can quantify whether or not we actually accomplish things. They had recommended that my action steps have timelines, which we've included and I appreciated, and they actually had suggested the action step that I review and then revise those two components, outcomes and action items after the first year. So I thank them for their feedback. So I just want to share the goals briefly. I'm happy to answer additional questions if people have them. I tended to take a goal a page and try to put the information I could on that page, and in some examples drill down a little bit further so you can see how they're attempting to be laid out. The first goal, which we state as a student improvement goal, is by April 2026, the district will provide aligned instructional practices and standard-based curricula that promote higher order thinking skills and rich learning experiences through, and these are the outcomes that we're hoping to address. Early childhood inclusion opportunities. We're looking to increase them, specifically in our substantially separate programs. Implementation of the K-5 ELA curriculum. Implementation of a middle school co-teaching model, and the goal is to have that at all of our middle school servicing schools. Expansion of unified courses and post-high school opportunities at the high school level. Expansion of programming for early college, dual enrollment, and innovation pathways at the high school. And then increased use and effectiveness of instructional strategies that promote critical thinking and deeper learning. In the actual goals document, you can see some of the measurables we're putting out there. This is probably a good example of things that you'll do in year one and move on to in year two. A creation of an early childhood task force charged with increasing inclusion opportunities, and review and implementation of the plan would be in that second year. So you'd see us add a couple of outcomes next year. In terms of implementation of the new curriculum, K-5, using walkthrough and evaluation data that demonstrates that we have 100% of our K-5 elementary teachers who are utilizing the program. And so that's a couple examples of how we're moving forward and proposing to track that work. Goal 2 would be a district improvement plan, and so that is by 2026. April 2026, the district will evaluate and begin to implement a multi-tiered system of support. And so we talk frequently about MTSS, and this is basically our MTSS goal, and it's to develop structures for tiered systems of support across grade level, which we really don't have in existence at this time. And one of the outcomes would be to develop a data infrastructure and training for professionals to better identify student needs to inform instruction and interventions. Right now in the district, we really are at a pretty basic level in terms of how we interact with data. And this is something we would try to measure by, in the next year, completed data literacy training for our administrators and our ILT team leaders, giving people training on Open Architect, which is a data platform that helps you interpret trends and other things in your MCAS data and other data, and then also to train the trainer model. So we have people who are more familiar with Panorama Student Success Platform, and that's the platform that we're using. It's a warehouse, and we should have a presentation to the whole committee at some point this year, so you can really look at what it is. It's almost like a data warehouse for every individual student. Not only how they do academically, but also looking at things like attendance or anything else that might be happening for the child and, their survey data. And so the idea is that we want every teacher to be able to access that and to know their students and to be able to look at that. And this will also drive our student assistance teams, where they can look at the data, have conversations, and track interventions that we might be trying and whether or not they're successful. I think the last thing that program does is it gives you a holistic and vertical view of how kids are doing. So when a child moves from one school to another and you go from Dawson to Mount View, you can see how that child had done a little bit earlier, and you can also see the things that worked and maybe the things that didn't work. But you have a much more complete picture as you transition from one school building to another, and then also between grade levels. So it's a pretty important step for the district moving forward. Lastly, my professional practice goal would be by April 2026, the district will assess, develop, and improve district communication systems with the goal of standardizing effective communications with students, parents, and the greater community through new communication pipelines to enhance parent-teacher communication. So You've seen some of these already this year with parent conferences, and you'll see this when they share it at the first marking term for the new report cards, and trying to get survey data to see if those initiatives are successful. A formal review of district-wide communication practices and adoption of new communication methods where necessary. I would say in the next 2 meetings that we present district reports, you'll get one of those or a request of one of those from me, because we have that work and need to finalize it at the, I just want to make sure I'm on board with all of our departments, but there is a plan for that, and there's clearly a need, and so I certainly wouldn't deny that. But it's also looking at things like the website. You know, right now we have a frustrating website that's not accessible by a lot of folks, and I'm desperate to try to find ways that, because that's communication as well, and how you share things and how you share information, and then we talk about it too. My hope would be, with some of the products we're looking at, it would also be something that we could take a little bit, hopefully, of the pressure off of the same old people in the district. You know, we have this tendency to ask the same people to do things over and over again in multiple departments. I'm thinking of you, Barry Sklar. And so, you know, this would be an opportunity perhaps for us to make communication better, and then also address what, you know, what we're asking people to do, and keeping that consistent. And then lastly, continue collaboration with our town partners. It was mentioned earlier tonight, this will be a gigantic budget year. FY26 budget is going to be very big, in that we've established that the district is at risk, potentially to be in hold harmless again. With that, we've also talked about district improvement work, and we heard about it tonight when CPAC presented. There's a real need for resources throughout the district, and we've committed this year to try to find out what are those resources and to present them in a needs-based budget to the school committee, but also to our towns. And I acknowledge that, especially with hold harmless status, the likelihood that we'll be asking some of our towns whether or not they need to consider a potential override is there. And so we want to try to make sure we're as upfront about that as possible. We give the towns plenty of runway to ask us questions or provide further details to them, but do the best job we can to articulate the needs, because we truly feel like this is the year. And then last, it's continue our work with the Town Growth and Facilities Task Force. Central Mass Planning has already applied for the grant for phases 2 and 3 of that work, but we want to continue that work and make sure, because I think it's some important things that are going on in the towns developing their own partnership, and at times involving the district. So those are some outcomes that we would expect from that process. So happy to provide further detail or just be quiet.
Any questions about the superintendent's presentation? Jana and Matt.
Should we take a motion first before discussing?
There was a presentation, but sure, yeah. I think let's do it first. Janet, do you have a motion?
Yeah. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the superintendent goals as written.
So moved. Oh, wait, second?
Seconded by Linda. Okay, open it up for discussion. Jana, and then Matt, if you had a comment.
So first, I'd like to thank Dr. Riley and the subcommittee. This is clearly a lot of work. There's a lot in here. There's a lot more detail in these goals than, you know, I know you were trying to give us like a briefer presentation, which I appreciate. I appreciate that there's a lot in here about reporting back to school committee and the timeframes for that, so that we can keep the, you know, on top of all these things. My only, and I believe that these are worthwhile goals. I'm glad to see them. I think they address a lot of our concerns. My only concern for some of them is that they do rely on having the money in the budget for these things to happen. Quite a number of them, actually. And I do think that, you know, obviously they are goals of the district. I think that's something as school committee that we need to work hard to give you the budget in order to achieve these goals for our district. But I am a little concerned that if the towns don't pass budgets, that some of these goals won't be doable, and I was wondering if that was discussed at all at your meetings.
Are you specifically talking about the outcomes or the goals themselves? I assume you're talking about the outcomes.
The outcomes, right.
Yeah, so I mean, if you want.
Yeah, no, I think it's accurate. I think it's why I say that we may have to look at some of the outcomes. So I guess take as an example the MTSS goal number 2. You know, we still rely, and we're still trying to do a work on identifying some efficiencies in district to support some things. Is it possible that we may not get funding for all the complete model for MTSS and have those positions in place next year? It is. And then we would have to perhaps adjust some of the outcomes and say that we're going to try to support these positions in the budget this next year, in the next iteration of the FY27 budget, you know, and then also, but I think for us in the discussion we did have, I remember, this is work that we've stated in the strategic plan and stated, you know, tried to emphasize in the district improvement plan that's vital to the district moving forward. And we feel like there's an urgency based on our data and people's personal experience that we have to do this and commit to it. I'm of the belief that I would rather make goals that I need to adapt or may not even achieve and have them be things that we sincerely think are going to improve the district experience for students and maybe not reach that goal, then make goals that, you know, don't support the most vital work in the district, and you could, you know, I could say they're done tomorrow, you know. And so thank you for pointing it out, because it does make them a little bit scary, and you know, we are going to have to course correct if we don't get some of the things, because resources is a big piece of this district moving forward. But I like them being in here too, because what's forcing us to do is really get you a needs-based budget that says this is the system that we believe is going to work. These are the resources that we're going to need to make it happen. And having done the work to say these are the resources we need, we'll cross the next bridge in terms of getting the resources, but I feel like we'll be 60% there if we can do it.
No, I appreciate that, because I think, you know, obviously the district has huge needs, and I appreciate that, you know, in your goals that you're willing to put in those big tasks and those big reaches for things that our district is sorely lacking. So I appreciate, you know, taking those swings. So I just, again, yes, please present us with a budget, not just for the student needs and staff, but also administratively, so that, you know, obviously we can try to get these things done. So
If I could just add. Yep. So also with the way that we had hoped to, the timeline of the goals being over 2 years, we'll have more frequent check-ins. My hope is that when they do get changed for whatever reason, I would have a report like directly after that I could bring to the full committee, and we would be aware of these things as they're happening, so that it's something that we kind of all know as a group. And but yeah, I think it's likely that some of them will change, but the idea is hopefully they don't have to, and we get through them.
okay, cool, thank you.
Matt?
So I'll try to follow Robert's Rules of Order, and I'm not going to support this motion as the goals are written. And I think the last discussion highlights some of the lack of specificity in these goals. And I'll start with goal number 1. It mentions, quote unquote, higher order thinking skills. When I think of goals, I would think of defining what those higher order thinking skills are that would be utilized, and just thinking about, there's a lot of verbiage in there that could be interpreted multiple ways. In goal 2, it mentions a multi-tiered system support. So MTSS has specific components. One of those components is collaboration. We heard tonight from multiple people about lack of collaboration. I did not see an element of collaboration in goal 2, so I'd be careful with using terms like MTSS if we're not including the key elements of that. Goal 3 is the goal that I have the most concern with. That has the superintendent assessing, developing, and implementing communication strategies as fit. Nowhere on there, it talks about parent-teacher. Nowhere on there does it address some of the major concerns in the last evaluation as to why the superintendent received a needs improvement. And a lot of it was communication directly from the superintendent's office. And I did not see anything in that goal that directly impacted that. I'd also ask for something to have a little bit more measurability. So an example would be, goal number 3 could be measured by a reduction in PRS complaints by X%. if we're thinking that there's a correlation. But to stick with Robert's Rules of Order, I like the general sense of these, but I think the subcommittee met twice on these, but I don't think they have enough feedback or specificity to look at goals, especially over 2 years. We don't know what the makeup of subcommittees are. We don't know what the makeup of this body is. So talk about changing goals in year 2 really concerns me as we think about what does year 1 look like.
So,
Yep. Go ahead, you can respond.
to be clear, we're not suggesting we will change goals in the second year. The only difference will be how we measure whether those goals are met, because we may not be able to measure those things across the 2 years. So the outcomes and the actual bullet items those may change, but the goal itself will not change. So make that clear.
Yeah, that's part of my concern is having specificity on what's measured. That's the definition of a SMART goal, measurable.
I think
with a defined
just
timeframe.
through the chair, I think some of the details that Member LaVoy is looking for, he can find if he looks at the action items under some of the goals. And so, as an example, the goal around focusing on deeper learning, it's one of the action steps is develop a district-wide focus on critical thinking, deeper learning, providing necessary professional development for administration staff. And so an action item is use the DESE deeper learning instructional tools to drive improvement in teacher practice, including WIDA refreshers, determine pedagogical priorities that support WRSC vision of instruction, and necessary supports for specific target populations and cultural considerations to help guide the selection of curriculum. Work with our WRSD administrative team during PLT to develop a working definition of deeper learning beyond critical thinking. We're tasked with doing that this spring. Use curriculum meeting time to build principal skills to observe and provide actionable feedback to support teacher growth in the area of deeper learning. And so these are some of the items that we have in the goal to try to really incrementally address some of those goals, because to Member LaVoy's point, I certainly don't disagree with him. I think that sometimes the speak can be very wide-ranging and not have the specificity that is important in goals like this.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, we're ready to move to a roll call vote.
Member Beardmore?
Beardmore, yes.
Member Boyd?
LaVoy, no.
Member Larway?
Lorway, yes.
Member Poole?
Oh, yes.
Member Gustafson?
Gustafson, yes.
Member Haber?
Haber, yes.
Member Brennan?
Brennan, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
Chair Lundstrom?
Chair abstains and the motion passes. All right, we will move on to the Facilities and Security Subcommittee. Member Woodland.
So I have a report to share, but before that, just an update. Facilities and Subcommittee had met earlier in September, and we heard updates regarding all 13 buildings as usual, which you can find in the minutes. The capital requests from FY25 were updated, or the response was updated. And these were from last fall, so most of them are moving along, though not all. The generator work at the ECC is ongoing, so there's preparation for when it's delivered later this year, and that's done in collaboration with the town of Holden. We also heard about the high school auto shop update with a temporary placement in a structure, which will then be used in the future for storage once the classroom is permanently repaired. That one of the major item that we discussed was about Paxton. This year, the school committee recommended to the town that the boiler be replaced as the capital project. But with routine maintenance, it's looking like it might need to be replaced sooner than that process can happen. So we discussed how administration would be talking with the towns to move forward on that item. And then, Barry, do you have the building inspections report?
Do I have that?
Yeah, I sent you the.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
1 second. Listen, you can't do it that far ahead of time. That's not how we work.
That's all right. You need a minute?
Just one, yeah.
So do you want to just, so Audit Advisory Board is next, so I think just in the interest of time while he's pulling that up, do you want to give, is there any update from
Oh,
Audit
sure.
Advisory Board?
So the only update, I think, is that we are set to meet on October 29th.
Okay. That was faster than I was
I'm
expecting.
sorry.
So that's all right. All right.
I don't know where, hang on. It's gonna be all right.
Take your time, Barry. We'll circle back to this. There's only a couple other things to do, but we'll circle back. The next item on the agenda is actually CPAC liaison report. I don't remember, Lavoie, I don't know if you have any updates as CPAC liaison. I have a couple things. Sorry, Matt.
You can go first.
Okay. Just a couple quick things about CPAC. The next CPAC general membership meeting is on Monday, November 12th at 6:30 p.m. at the Curriculum Center in Central Office. And also this Wednesday, the 23rd, there's actually an informational meeting about the MACI program at the high school. So the MACI program is the Massachusetts Inclusive Concurrent Enrollment Initiative. It's a program that allows public high school students with intellectual disabilities from the ages of 18 to 22 to participate in college programs. The district is starting to partner with Quinsigamond Community College to offer some of these programs to our students who are in that 18 to 22 range that are still in the post-grad program at the high school, but to give them opportunities to participate in some classes at Quinsigamond Community College. So for any parents that might be interested in this now or in the future, there's an informational meeting this Wednesday, the 23rd at 6 p.m. here in the Wachusett Media Center. Anything else? Matt?
So I'm thinking about, there was a CPAC liaison report, Scott, and you and I are the liaisons. Would it be beneficial, and this is more just rhetorical as you were thinking about the agenda for next meetings, would it be beneficial for us to distribute a report to this body in advance of a meeting rather than just ad hoc waiting to this and incorporating some of the things that discussed? And more of just a rhetorical question, but something to think about as you're thinking about next meeting and just taking steps for improvement.
Yep, I think it's a pretty good idea. All right, we're going to circle back to the facilities report if we're ready to go. Excellent.
Thank you. Annually, the Facilities and Security Subcommittee inspects at least one building in each town as well as the district-owned buildings. We still have Thomas Prince and Paxton Center to do, which are scheduled for October and November. These are attended by the subcommittee, many of the administrators and town administrators, state delegations sometimes, and basically it's a way to build bridges between various stakeholders. And I just wanted to give a little overview. Some of these tours have also helped inform some of the capital requests and recommendations we've made to the towns. And I just gave a little timeline of how these have progressed over the years. One thing to note is how much time it takes between the recommendation to the towns and to completion. And a lot of that has to do with budget cycle timing. So I'd really like to be able to get onto a pattern of looking at these 2 years in advance, but we're getting there. We're getting much closer to that, I think. All right, so we visited the high school in July, and the key thing to take away from the high school, I think, is that this building is aging. It's a lot older than you might think it is, and when it was built, there were a lot of subcontractors who had to work together without much oversight or communication, and so a lot of things that were installed might not have been installed correctly, or they've been kind of helped along. So there are key building systems that have aged out, or else were never properly built or installed. And there are really millions of dollars of projects here, and any of them could fail without much notice due to age and pre-existing problems. And it's beyond the scope of proper maintenance. It's just these are old. And there hasn't been a plan for replacement for routine end-of-life needs. So things like the rooftop HVAC units, those were not designed properly, and so as they break, they are rebuilt. And so if you recall from the capital improvement plan, there is a timed plan for replacing those in batches. So it's going, but that is a pretty expensive need. The electrical controller system is another one like that. The bathrooms is another highlight where they're showing their age. There's a lot more inappropriate use by students that is difficult to control around the cafeteria. And the grounds as well. These are just aging out with concrete crumbling, and the exterior stairs, I don't know if you recall from last year, they were washed out in a rain. So there's a temporary fix, but a lot of these temporary fixes need resources for creating permanent ones. I see a lot of this breakdown as systems versus programs, but the systems will impact programs or have already. When we toured, the automotive classrooms floor was intact. It was not soon after, with weaknesses from improper drains. There were concerns about doing ventilation better than it is at the time. The upper field drainage is a constant problem where the field is waterlogged, and so that puts strain on all of our fields if one is not really able to be used. There's a lot of work that this building needs. I don't really know if this is getting at the full extent of what we saw on the tour. A comment that we made was that it seems like there's even more issues that are coming forward now of, things like this carpet should be replaced in this room, and so on. So the ECC is the other district-owned building, and here we have some more major concerns. The capacity for programs, there's not enough classroom space to really service the number of kids that you would imagine a district of our size would need to have in a early child care program. The bathrooms, the fixtures are actually not sized correctly, so that's a challenge. The roof, the upper building portion has leaks and the chimneys in need of stabilization, which is in process. And the playground, if you've gone back to the ECC, the playground does not have an appropriate surface for children with mobility needs. And the equipment is, I think, lovingly added to the area. There's a lot of creative play spaces there. But it is, I don't think, what we would really want to have for our youngest children in the district. And included in that is the issue with the parking lot, where it is a safety concern, where the administration in the building and the district as a whole have worked hard to figure out what can be done for addressing the safety needs. Because remember, these are little kids and often with even smaller siblings that need to come in twice a day. Let's see, connected to the ECC is the central office. And here we have seen that the roof is at its end of life, and there's currently the bid process to replace the roof. There's a need for a security system. The boiler is closing in on 100 years old, and it's a steam boiler, belongs in the Smithsonian, I think. And so it works, but it needs a lot of maintenance and care and attention. And we look at capacity for office space, and right now we have some central office staff that are working out of Glenwood, and so that poses a problem with collaboration. And basically the building as it stands does not really function for office space or for early child program as what you would want. So those are our district-owned buildings, and then we toured the town, a few town-owned buildings. So we toured Davis Hill in July as well, and the town manager, Peter Lukes, was in attendance aside from district administrators in the subcommittee. One of the major issues that we looked at was the fuel line. This had failed in June, and our Director of Facilities, Mark Wild, he's helped the town by doing the repairs and planning because the town did not start the repair yet. And the school would not have opened on time unless the district stepped in to start the town's work. And so this needs to be replaced with a permanent fix by winter. There has been a lot of increased collaboration between the district and the towns, and I want to thank Director Wild for that and Dr. Riley for creating these avenues. With another couple things to highlight for Davis Hill, the capacity is all right, but it's tight. If 2 additional classrooms are added, that's when we'll need to start looking at what to do about the space, whether it's being creative about moving things around, the need for additional modulars, I don't know. And we have some information from the Town Growth and Facilities Task Force to indicate we can predict a little bit more of when we'll need to look for that. And then, as always, the security at Davis Hill is an ongoing issue. We toured Glenwood in Rutland, and Austin Siganowitz from the town administrator and also our state reps joined us. The major needs there are paving and the sidewalks that need a major overhaul. There's a lot of heaving, potholes, sidewalks that are not, that crumble. And unique to Glenwood is that it has a facade wrapping around it that is made of concrete and it's crumbling. And so that obviously is a major concern for this area. And so we discussed with our state reps about getting a core sample taken to look into that. The last that I'd heard was that it looks like it potentially is an issue with not having gutters, which was a cost-saving measure that was decided when the building was first put up. And the water heater is another need that looks like will be coming due. I also want to point out here that the town is really stepping up in looking at projects to work with the district. For instance, the town is taking on redoing the surface of the playground that's dedicated to the special education program there, and they installed the security systems that were requested as well. And then last, we toured Houghton and Choxet, and Bill Caldwell, the Sterling Town Administrator, joined us there as well. There are a few main issues here with Houghton, the gym floor, and this was our request for the town this year. The gym floor in Houghton has gouges in the flooring that are from the old voting machines, and so those should be patched, replaced, or something to ensure safety. This flooring is from probably the 1970s, so is due. And in general, if you look at the age of these buildings, Houghton was refurbished and added onto, and Choxet created in 1998. So that's the window for looking at new roofs, boilers, windows, and here again, the rooftop HVAC units. These are all in the end-of-life territory. And then curbing and sidewalks and paving, in particular at Choxet. They've settled and heaved in various places, and so that needs to be fixed. And again, I want to highlight here that many projects were completed here recently. The flooring was a partial project that was requested. So the hallways were requested to be replaced from carpet to VCT tile, and that was a great opportunity as well for the custodial staff at Houghton and Choxet. They normally only have 2 weeks to complete a deep clean, whereas the other districts have much more time over the summer. But because of holding the ESY program, they only have 2 weeks to get a lot of work done. But while the hallways were being changed over, they had the chance to have a full summer to do that deep clean while Glenwood hosted ESY, and so that was very much appreciated. And I think that is everything. So we'll come back to report on Thomas Prince and Paxton Center in this winter. If there are any questions, this will be provided, obviously, and put on the website.
Questions, Matt?
This is a question, I don't know if it's through through Linda or through the superintendent, but there's been some discussion or inquiries about utilizing the track at the high school when school's not in session. Is there a policy on that? Is there a statement on that?
I can get an update for you and talk to, I'm not sure what's being done right now in terms of what the access is or what the procedure is that people are going through.
So just a point of information. There's a general law in Massachusetts on the use of school property, and for the purposes of promoting the usefulness of public school property, the school committee of any town may conduct such educational and recreational activities in or upon school property under its control and subject to such regulations as it may establish, and consistently and without interference with the use of the premises for school purposes, shall allow the use thereof by individuals and associations for such educational, recreational, social, civic, philanthropic, and like purposes as it deems necessary for the interest of the community. And the reason why I was asked is representatives specifically from the town of Holden are concerned about being forced to zone for multifamily housing units and feel that it would be in the interest of the community to be able to allow for facilities to be utilized for social and for development purposes. So I think it would be beneficial for a response for administration because this impacts growth of this community and how the school is going to support that. It is a school under the school committee's purview. We're going to be asking people, it looks like, for money for improvement. So we've got to think about what is the benefit for the greater community.
I think we can take that under advisement and report back to the next
And
attendance
this,
report.
I just want to iterate that this originated because members of the community have been kicked off of the track and by staff of the high school. And if that's happening, I think it's important for us to be pretty transparent about why and why people would be asked to leave. I can understand while school's in session, but when school's not in session or on the weekends.
So why don't we take a look at our policies and procedures and report back, get the next meeting. Any further discussion of the facilities report? I think I'd just like to say it's worrisome how much work needs to happen in this district. I know there's the opportunity for borrowing, so it doesn't necessarily need to be in our budget, but there's a lot here we're going to have to deal with in the coming years.
Yeah, I just want to echo, if I can as well, through the chair, that absolutely, and honestly, particularly around the district-owned buildings. But I also just want to recognize the work of the subcommittee and then also the response of the towns in that I think there's been more town-funded improvements to our buildings in the last 2 years than really had happened over the last several. And so Rutland's a great example where they've already installed their security systems that were approved at the town meeting. So we very much appreciate their partnership. Every town at this point has approved, for the security system improvements. Holden is going to be putting theirs in this year and then throughout the district. And that's a big accomplishment, and we're very thankful for their support. But there's a ton of work to do.
Yeah. Malia.
Just a note for the future. I've been hearing, this is not the school committee purview, but I have been hearing a lot of concern about, in Holden, projects approved in last year's budget that have not been started or completed this year. And I know that's not specifically our purview, but I'm hoping there's some way perhaps you can follow up in your town manager meetings. Because many residents of town assume they've been done. And when it comes up that they haven't, then there's a lot of feedback of, wow, who's responsible? The security, as well as the playgrounds, as well as the connector to Dawson in particular, which will become a very big issue when winter comes. Many people assume we approved the money, therefore it's done, and it's not yet been even started. And I know the town has reasons for that, but it's been brought to my attention a lot in the past couple of weeks, so I am relaying that.
Yeah, I just would share, the good news is I know there was some playground work that was begun at Dawson on Friday. Great. And
That is good news.
Yep. No, so I think we're hopeful that we're moving forward, and I think much like the district has been, at times struggled with hiring folks and getting people who have the capacity to do some of this work. I think some of that work, or some of that has happened in Holden as well. But yeah,
Great.
it's important for us to continue to work with them and
Yeah.
keep informed and keep people informed, because it was a huge accomplishment to have these projects funded.
Yep.
And they definitely are needed. So the hope is that we're starting to make progress now, and we're going to have them completed in the near future.
Any other comments? Nope. I think that steam boiler in particular, being in the Smithsonian, is true. Like, I've heard it referred to as Mike Mulligan's steam shovel,
Yeah.
for anyone that knows that book, and it really, that's what it looks like, yes. All right, so let's move on. Thank you, Linda. So we're down to school council reports. Do we have any school council reports this evening? Member Gustafson?
I have one. The Dawson Simcoe met today. We actually had a pretty productive meeting, talked about a lot of things. They wanted to thank, there was a lot of praise for the teachers who've worked really hard in implementing the new curriculum. So they wanted to thank the district for the new curriculum and also the training that's gone with that and the support of our teachers. They actually talked about a lot of the things that the superintendent mentioned in his goal 2, things that are starting to happen around ILTs and team training and the panorama experts and using that data in the schools. There was actually requests from another parent at the meeting to go through the panorama, kind of how it's used, and so they're planning to do that at their next Simcoe meeting, which is great. There are a lot of initiatives linked to the strategic plan. They walked through a lot of those. The MTSS was mentioned as a success, but also areas of budgetary needs, which we did get into, particularly that there is, as we've heard in other areas, not enough staff to support Tier 2 as much. We've done some work on 1 and 3, but we need a lot more for Tier 2, which I know administration is aware of, but that will definitely be in their budget requests. We talked a little bit about that. We've talked about some schedule changes they've done to limit pullouts. Not to limit them, but to minimize the amount of content instruction that's being missed and be really intentional about that, and how they've had to shift a lot of school schedules, but done so gladly because it's something that benefits their students. There are some positive changes without spending extra funds this year. They have seen some huge changes in their culture. They've added a special education teacher, so now they have one that spends half their time in general education throughout the school and half their time with the TLC program. So that was an additional position this year. They've shifted the roles of their school counselor or their school psychologist. So they are doing some counseling and also doing a lot of work with the TLC program and not as much evaluation because the district has done some consulting for evaluation. They said that's made a huge shift in the ability to meet their students' needs. They are looking for a part-time school psychologist to do some of that in-house again, but positions hiring is what it is. They have a part-time team chair, which they talked about extensively. It frees up a lot of time of the administrators to actually spend time in the classrooms and address needs and see what's going on in their schools. They have also talked about the benefit of the new coordinator for TLC, which is a central office position. But when her duties were kind of realigned with that new coordinator, it's really helped them a lot because the principal was previously doing a lot of that coordinating. So they had a lot of praise for that as well. They have things still not accounted for. They have some challenges with space. They mentioned the connector project. They have, went over a couple budget requests. They anticipate another TLC coordinator. A major scheduling challenge there is that their students do not have a special every day because they simply don't have the staff to cover that, which next year will be a concern with the additional planning time required and that they want to give their students and that some other schools have now. And so they are anticipating a need for another related arts teacher of some sort, which will come up. But I thought that the general need was important to convey, how that's working. They've also noticed with the new ELA curriculum that their kindergarten students in particular, because of the technology we have, which are Chromebooks, it's not the most compatible with some aspects of the ELA curriculum they're noticing, but they're really taking an interest. That comes from them being able to be in the classrooms and observe those things. And so they obviously are talking about that with other staff and thinking of what tech needs might make that more accessible. They talked about the positives of the district-wide programming happening in special education. And at their next meeting, they will be talking about more panorama. They'll be talking more about the strategic plan in particular and going into their school improvement plan in more detail. So it was a really productive meeting with a lot of positives and also a lot of forward thinking about the budget and what might be needed next year. So, thank you.
Thanks, Malia. Jana?
Hi. So the high school Simco met on October 8th. High school Simco will be meeting the second Tuesday of every month for the rest of the year. So we had a very productive meeting. First, I'd like to say that this is the second Simco I've been on. Before I was in Davis Hill, and I love that there are student representatives at the high school. So it's really nice to get their feedback and have some student involvement. So that was really nice. We did basically more of an overview for this meeting, what to expect for Simco, for people who hadn't been on it before, staffing updates, building updates, things like that. So there was some discussion about ways to attract students to stay at Wachusett, which I know is on the game plan. So there was discussion about maybe doing an open house in December, if that's a possibility, the way that Monty Tech does an open house. There was more talk about pathways and adding more pathways and what those might look like, as well as changing schedules to allow more flexibility so that students can do internships with some of these pathways. Students had some input on other things that might be helpful. They were talking about revamping seminar class and allowing more flexibility for students to have more input into how their schedules go with more options before, earlier in their high school career. So those were some of the things that we talked about. Building updates, the new bells and intercoms are up and running, and so everyone can hear each other in all parts of the building, so that's very exciting. As our student representative said, the auditorium was about to be installed, so that should be done soon, and so that's very exciting. And then also the explanation on Auto Shop, how they're going to get that functioning throughout the year until we can rebuild the shop, and then using that space for maintenance vehicles, so they won't be in the shop later on, was great. Also talked about Principal Pratt's vision for the year, big school, small community. So we were discussing different ways on ways to get people to feel more connected within the Wachusett community. That's mostly what we talked about. And then in our next meeting, we will start taking a look at the school improvement plan.
Cool. Anyone else? Shannon.
So the Davis Hill Simco met on October 17th. Discussed a lot of the same things. That seems like everyone's on the same page. School improvement plan is going to be up on the next meeting. We talked a little bit about that. Building focus on MTSS, school improvements. We talked a little bit about the enrollment being down a little bit in Davis Hill. So there's down to 3 kindergarten classes instead of 4. So there was some discussion about the results from Mass Central Planning, and they discussed that they were concerned that the last time there was a forecast, they just took the number from Holden and divided it by 3 to get the number from Davis. So I didn't see it broken down, so that's something for us to consider when we're thinking about it. So that. The next meeting is November 21st, and it was mostly just introductions in the group. So,
okay, Linda. Yep.
Sorry, I just wanted to say the report My recollection of the report that we just got from CMRPC, there were individual schools.
I tried to find it, and I didn't find it in the printout that I was reading, as I was reading it. It may
So
be
that-
in there, yeah, but,
We should double check that, but my recollection is that it is by school,
okay.
but I could be wrong.
All right, any other Simco reports? Seeing none, we're moving on to new business. Do we have any new business this evening? Okay, having completed all business on the agenda for this evening, I declare this meeting is adjourned.